welcome everyone to this future-proof container terminal episode. Today we got an interesting guest, John Alvarez, and I will define why interesting is not only due to his background in multiple automation projects, but also due to his experiences on the IT side, operational side, and project side. So especially these days that we are hearing more and more about automation, it's really important for us to get those lessons learned from colleagues in this industry and get all those insights from them and try to apply those into our automation projects. So with that being said, John, welcome to the virtual stage.
Thank you, Christopher. How you doing?
Yeah, so John, the plan for today is that we have been putting together some questions based on the constant or the top ask, items here, and you have been also adding some questions from your side, and it will be great if you can share your thoughts, lesson learned, and experience, especially on this automation journey. So if that is okay for you, let's go for it.
Sure.
So, John, before starting, for those who haven't got the chance to work with you or meet you yet, can you share a little bit more about who is John?
Yeah. Good afternoon, good morning, everybody. My name is John Alvarez. I was lucky enough to be part of a big project, a mega project here in California, in the West Coast, in the US. The project was to fully automate a terminal, an existing terminal. So as you can imagine, we have a lot of challenges during the journey. So that's what we did, starting from a conceptual design of the terminal. So again, I was lucky to participate in that as well, to all the way to, for example, be part of the machine selections, software selection, the cost selection, be part of the system integration as well, having to deal with authorities to get the approval from the machine to be used, from the electrical perspective, from the safety perspective. So it was a very interesting journey. So that's what we did.
Really interesting topics you mentioned here, and this is quite important when we talk about automation project. It doesn't matter if it is a semi or fully automated, but it's quite critical to get involved all the stakeholders, have this holistic approach. We cannot focus only on the terminal borders, how to say, from the key to the gate. No, we need to take a look in the whole stakeholders getting involved, port authorities, customs, how we'll be interacting, how our process will be interacting with different customers, how you'll be interacting not only with the key side, but also with a rail, with the truck community. So it's really interesting to have this approach since early stage on the project, John.
Correct. That is key, actually. Having all the vendors in the same room, discussing all the limitations of the system or what they can provide, be able to that you can overcome that as well. Again, it's key, and I think it was part of the success on the project that we had.
Great. And John, before starting into the hardcore questions, I always like to ask this question, so I will just shoot it also to you. And how would you describe terminals operations in one word?
Complexity. It's a very complex situation for us. Yeah, complexity to me is the right word.
And do you think this complexity is coming due to our many interactions, or is because the business has been evolving over the years?
I think it's a little bit to what we already said. When you're trying to integrate all the systems that you have at different parties, you need to try to fulfill everything from the operation point of view, but at the same time, you need to fulfill also safety, which is very important as well. Is number one. Then you need to also be able to get the approval from the port authorities to be able to use the machines. And at the end of the day, you need to integrate all the software systems as well. And that is part of the reason for the complexity that you have, right? You need to have operation happy, and at the same time, you need to be able to do it with systems, sensors, and machines itself. So that's the reason why I choose that word.
Got it. So, John, starting on this automation topic, you mentioned your experiences on this. Normally when we talk about the greenfield, we got type of white paper, but when it comes into brownfield, it's a different beast. I may say here, if we can use the word beast. And I would like to hear from your side why automation may or may not solve current operational challenges.
Well, again, that's a very good question. If automation is capable of fulfill those situations, I think the only way to overcome that is to have a system that is flexible. What I mean by that, in my opinion, the software that you are using for one or several vendors, doesn't matter. It has to be modular. What that means, if you need to adjust to new conditions, we learned that with the pandemic, right? You probably need to start changing things, the business model change. There are situations that you need to adapt to, right? And situations that you don't even know today. So the only way to overcome that, the software system has to be, as I said, flexible and modular. Why? Because if you need to modify a certain aspect of the system, if you have a modular system, you can just modify that, and the impact on the rest of the modules is going to be minimal. If you do have a system that is not modular, when you make a change in that particular portion, it can eventually affect the rest of the system because they are interconnected to each other in a very rigid way. So that's the only way that I can see that automation can overcome and adapt to new situations that you don't even know today. So that will be one of the recommendations, and something that we also learned during the show.
Yeah, really interesting this flexibility you are talking about, especially these days now that we need this. We need to adapt quite fast to an increase in the demand, and the worst case, we will also need to adapt to a lower or to a decrease in our demand. So that's why we really agree with you. I am totally agree with you that we should focus on this modularity to achieve this. And it's I always also like to ask this because each terminal is a different war, and according to the regions, you face totally different challenges. And it would be great if you can share a little bit more about what do you currently see at the market these days regarding automation?
Well, this day, and this is my particular opinion, of course, I don't see mega projects coming in the short term. But on the other hand, what I can see is a lot of terminals investing in automation in some way. What I mean by that, for example, California has to be electrified. Everything has to be moved by electricity or any other green power by 2030. So, for example, let's say that a terminal decides to work with electrical RTGs. Once you have the RTGs working in an electrical fashion, going to automation, to some level of automation, is no match that what you need to accomplish that. For example, when you have the electrical RTGs, there is an option to be able to put a remote console, for example, and take remote operators outside of the machine. And then you can just enable automatic gantry, for example, or go all the way to automation with the automatic stacking as well. So again, the infrastructure will be there. It will be a matter to adapt a few systems. to accomplish that. So I can see a lot of those projects coming in the I would say middle term, in the midterm, and also with process automation as well, helping to automate that part of the portion with the outside trackers and everything. So that's what I see, at least in this vision, for the I would say the short to midterm. By 2025, I believe everybody has to start dealing with the new regulations, so at least to start designing. And as we discussed before, right, to start working with the authorities, show what you're gonna do, working in the power, the electrical substations. So everything has to start, in my opinion, around 2024, 2025 to be able to, by 2029, 2030, have the system working 100% with no problem.
Yeah, it's really interesting, but you know, according to the country or region, you know, especially in Europe, there is an increase in environmental legislation. So there are many terminals creating these CO2 reduction roadmaps, for example, you know, trying to find the perfect mix or balance to achieve not only environmental targets, but also aligning this investment, so to say, so all the investments together with the financial part, the environmental part, and at the same time the operational. So, you know, without losing productivity, at the same time gaining all others benefit of not only automation but also different type of eco-efficiency levels. And yeah, you're totally right. You know, these days I still in some discussions when we talk about automation, you will find that people mix process automation and equipment automation, but there is a lot of things terminals can do at the process automation level, and not only as a terminal but also with, you know, with customer, with shipping lines, with truck community, you know, making you know, we hear quite a lot these port community systems, you know, to make process even smoother. Even these days, and it doesn't mean that you need to focus right away on equipment automation. I may say there is a lot of things you can do.
Correct. Correct. Mainly with the, you know, with the outside trackers and things like that. And as we discussed, right, the terminal has to make a big investment, right, to electrify or change the way that they are working today to reduce the carbon footprint. So since they are making a big investment, I think it's something that has to be considered. And as I said, it is the infrastructure will be there, so it won't be much to achieve some level of automation. I'm talking about machine automation, and of course, process automation is something that goes on top of that and can help a lot with the productivity as well.
Got it. And John, you know, I may say probably that journey was quite difficult for you, and a lot of learnings on the way. Just as you mentioned, even though you got a proper planning, you figure out ways to reduce risk. And by this I mean like you got an ongoing operation, and you were migrating into a different level of automation. But could you share how was that journey? What did you discover at that journey?
Well, yeah, what we discovered. I'm talking about 10 years ago, we didn't have too many tools in the market to be able to accomplish. And again, they were not standards, there were not too many tools. So we had to start building that. But based on what we learned, I would say that in different stages of the design of the implementation, you can use today very interesting tools that will help you a lot. The first one is when you are working on the layout design or the system design for the new terminal, even if it's a brownfield or greenfield, same idea, right? The first thing that you need to do, in my opinion, is to run as many emulations that you can. First of all, of course, when you don't know what the machine manufacturer will be or what tools you're going to be using, and you are in a very early stage of the design, simulations are fine, right? Simulation will give you a certain level of how everything will work, some ideas of how everything will work, but simulation, they don't use the same algorithm or the same logic as the real system will use. So again, it will give you some idea, but nothing else. But as soon as you know the vendors, the machine vendors, the top vendors, the best thing that you can do, even before you commit to the final layout design and approval, is to run simulations. Why? Because emulation will give you the closest look of how your terminal will run. Why? Because it will be using the same software that the system will use in production. So it will use the same algorithm and the same logic. And for example, for the scheduling of the machines, or the routing of the machines. So you have to use that to be able that your layout is according to what the system needs. And you can start dealing with or investigating such a situation. It's always casual. Okay, how many lanes do I need in the back reach or in automation to work? Is 2 lanes, 3 lanes, dependent, independent? What happens if I have 2 or 3 SPS trains working together? How the system will react? All of that can be achieved by emulation, even before the final design is done. And at the same time, what is useful in emulation? Because you can start training people way before your system is implemented. And as you know, training and education is key as well, because nobody have experience working on that, right? Usually for new operation people, and you can start looking how the system works even before that is accomplished. And then when you are in production, what is that useful? Well, obviously you can start playing with configuration changes. What if we do this? What if we do that? What if we put the ship in this location or here or there? That will help you to start testing that before you try that in production, right? And then, of course, every time that you receive a new version of your system vendor, you can install that in the emulation system and see how it works. And be sure that there is nothing broken before you install that version in production.
Really so interesting, John. I'm sorry I'm interrupting here. Just to clarify for the audience, can you describe what is the difference between simulation and emulation in a high level, at least?
Sure. Emulation is actually using the same software that the vendor or the provider will give it to you, while simulations is using a model to try to guess how, and probably guess is not the right word, right? But it's trying to behave as the real system will behave. But as I said, I mean, every machine vendor will have their own logic, their own scheduling system, their own router system, and of course will behave completely different to what simulation is. So again, simulation will give you an idea how the system will behave, but emulation will give you the closest look to what your terminal is going to look like what you are in production. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, this is quite clear. And you mentioned really important aspects. And I was also lucky to be part of an automation project. And I may say that it's really important how you can use these tools. Especially you mentioned for the training aspect of the people, because basically people and skills got a really critical role as soon as you start talking on semi or fully automated terminals, because exception handling management is like the difference between success and failure. So it would be great if you can share a little bit more about that topic.
Well, actually, I just heard once that, which is probably a very good phrase, which say your automation system will be as good as your exception handling system will be. And I think it's completely true. No system is perfect, and there is no system can work 100% of the time, right? So you need to be very, very, I would say, critical and very well detailed in every single process that you have. You need to document every process and look at how that process can fail. And trust me, it will fail. In some moment, someday it will fail. So how the system will react or how you have to react. So your system support people have to react in certain circumstances because the system itself cannot solve the issue. In certain circumstances, you can actually probably have the system to, in some way, reset to the normal condition. So, and actually that brings the step for the next thing that I was going to tell you about the importance, the lesson learned during the automation. What was the emulations, simulations, and the design? But the very important piece of the tools that we mentioned is the data. So everybody talks about data, right? And that's something that, my opinion, in an automated system is critical. Why? Because you have no feedback from people. There are no people. So what happens if, for example, the horizontal transport machine has an issue with alignment, right? Nobody's going to tell you, oh, the machine is turning in this way and I need to take it to another. There is no way. So you need to have a way to know that something is not normal in your system and react to it. The only way to accomplish that is through data. So how to do that? Probably the best way to do that is to create a historian when you save every single piece of data from your system. That includes all the telemetry from every single piece of machine, the access control system, the system messages, every single message that calls and the TLS or whatever system they are using. Everything has to be in a repository, in a historian. Why? Well, a couple of things. First of all, of course, you need to generate reports, right? At the end of the day, to see the KPIs and see how your system is performing, how you're doing, blah, blah, blah. But in my opinion, more important is how you react in real time. So you can use a historian with the data in real time and monitor for the anomalies. Like, for example, what if the sensor is failing? What if the system is not sending the heartbeat that they should be sending? Or there are messages in the system that are getting stuck and they are not being processed. Those kind of situations you cannot do manually because there are probably, I would say, 3 or 4 key systems, and the only way what you can do is go through the logs and start looking to see something happen. It's not possible, it's not human possible. So you need to collect all that data and react building or using real-time monitoring tools, right? Because with the reporting, yeah, you're fine, but if you have a problem, you will find that problem at the end of the shift and the damage is already done, right? So you need to react in real time. And as I said, the only way to accomplish that is to using data, building monitoring tools that allow you to react quickly when problem starts before it creates a domino effect.
Yeah, I'm totally agree with you, John. And I had been part of a operational team, and I may say that to improve decision making, you really need real-time data. It's not only generating data and storing data. We are not machines. We are not used to read ones and zeros. We need to transform those into something visible and tangible and friendly user, so we can improve our decision making. And well, now that you touched this process point, I would like to ask you, because I always get asked this question. So when we talk about automation, what comes first, like standardization or automation?
A very good question, but I wish we have a standard, but we don't. So it has to be created first. But if you are already rolling, what option do you have?
Yeah.
So to be honest, I don't know where standardization will be part of our normal life. I don't know. Maybe you have some insight on that. I don't.
Got it. And it's quite tricky, John. I have been discussing with different experts, and some of them believe that the standardization can close you in a box, but some others got a different perspective that the automation needs some previous standard way of working. And I agree on both sides. It's creating a balance on both, because also, as you mentioned, creating this standard way of working when we talk about automation can enable you to scale up quite easily.
Correct, and allow you to use different vendors as well, right? Because
That's
now
right.
it's an open standard, and you can use different, for example, different horizontal transport machines from different vendors, and for the system is agnostic, right? Because the machine behaves in the same way, or they should behave in the same way, as long as there is a standard. But as you say, that everything in life, there are pros and cons. Standardization, maybe for at least for some part of the system, will be nice to have. For other ones, probably have to be open, as you say, to allow growing and not put you in the box. But as I said, at this moment, it's just just talking. There is nothing concrete regarding standardization.
Got it. And well, sadly we are reaching an end, John. An end, and we can spend all day. We're quite passionate about this topic. But as a final question here is, if you got the chance to jump into an automation project these days, what would you do different with all those lessons learned?
Well, what I will do different is, of course, as I said, 10 years ago when we started, there was not simulations at the same level that we have today. And obviously there was no emulation because the system was not developed yet. So that's the first thing I will do, is to run as many emulations as I have a team of people just running and looking for the optimal layout design, for example, before we go live. And also train people, as I said. That's something that we learn as we go, right? So that's the first thing that I will do. And also, as I said as well, is data. And I will create a system way before we go live in production, and not after the fact, as it happened before. So I think those two things are critical. And I would say that we failed because we learned through the process, but definitely that is something that we'll do differently. But at the same time, if you ask me, I will tell you what we did right, I believe, is what we discussed at the beginning, which was sitting into the same room to all the vendors, the product quality. You cannot assume anything. You have to have everything discussed beforehand, having safety as a priority thing. The first thing, the most important thing, and then start building from there. You need to be sure that you can fulfill every aspect of the different, people, departments involved in the project way before we start working on. So that will be what I do differently, and I will do it in the same way.
Really, really great takeaways here, John. And that's something I always try to create this awareness that it doesn't matter which type of automation you need to get involved, the whole team, because it's not only operations or IT, it's operations, IT, commercial, the project guys, the whole team, finance, HSE, customs guys. So everyone needs to be involved and be aware that if you're evaluating automation, it's almost a reality that your way of working will be changing into a different way. So I really appreciate your time, John.
Thank you, Christopher. Thank you.
And hope you can join any future session. And
sure, anytime.
And you are always welcome.
Well, thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
Thanks.
For having me.
Thanks, John.